Private Leo Trent froze mid-bite, the protein bar oozing across his glove. "I swear on my aunt's ashes," he rasped, "that tiger just smiled at me, and not the friendly kind." Sergeant Dax Vale arched a brow. Overhead, the triple suns blazed through the Corp Prime Biodome's emerald canopy. This was heat sculpted for hunt beasts, the sort that drag you into tall grass and snap femurs as if they're celery. "Still sucking on those anti-rad lozenges?" asked Systems Tech Marek. "I'm telling you," Vale insisted, stabbing a finger toward the far side of the clearing. It smiled. Big, toothy, smug. Lieutenant Ariasato didn't bother looking up from her datapad. "It isn't a tiger. It's a Velothri Pantraxis. Cousin to old Earth felids, yes, but smarter, stronger, telepathic, the xenobiologists say." "Telepathic?" Trent squeaked. So it read Vale's thoughts and decided to grin. "Explains plenty," Vale muttered. Sato set the pad aside, sweat sliding down her temple. "In less than half an hour, the Velothri Hunting Council arrives. Command says we're not merely guests, we're peers. We eat together. Holsters stay shut, egos stay lower than your pulse. Clear." "Great," Trent sighed. "Dinner with mind-reading apex predators. What could possibly go sideways?" Exactly 30 minutes later they appeared, not walking so much as stalking on elongated hind limbs. Even upright, the Velothri looked like violence biding its time. Obsidian skin rippled over corded muscle and armored plates. Trophy fangs, claws, and tiny skulls swung from leather thongs. Their leader, Kurok, stepped forward, the greeting rumbling more like distant thunder than speech. Lieutenant Sato activated her translator. "Lieutenant Arya Sato of the Terran Expeditionary Corps. We honor your summons." Kurok's golden eyes narrowed. "You are smaller than stories suggest, perhaps quicker-witted." "Your courtesy is noted," Sato replied. "No courtesy," the alien answered. "Tonight we learn. Your pack will eat with ours. Your rituals amuse us." He gestured toward a ring of flat basalt slabs encircling a fire pit. Whole carcasses, nothing neatly butchered, turned slowly on vertical spits, bathing the air in a scent at once mouth-watering and faintly alarming. Vale's stomach lurched. "Is that thing still twitching?" Trent whispered. "Residual nerves," Vale guessed, hopefully. The soldiers sat, each paired with a predator who seemed more accustomed to cracking spines than making small talk. Vale's tablemate wore a mantle braided from metallic fibers. It stared through him for what felt like half a minute before offering something between a nod and a challenge. A deep, resonant chime pulsed across the clearing, the signal to begin. The Velothri ignored utensils. The humans followed suit, tearing charred muscle from bone, passing roasted organs, as though they were field ration peanuts. The flesh was tougher than ration pork, yet flooded the tongue with strange, wild flavors. Vale suspected both nightmares and indigestion awaited. At last Kurok raised a curved talon, silencing the crunch of cartilage. "Among the Velothri," he intoned, "sharing meat is the first hunt, not for prey, but for truth. What you consume, you honor. What you refuse, you challenge. Do you challenge us, humans?" Lieutenant Sato swallowed, hopefully not an eyeball, and met his gaze. "We accept your meal. No challenge intended." Kurok smiled, a predator's crescent that never meant hello so much as soon. Smoke curled in lazy ribbons above the fire pit, carrying the iron-sweet perfume of sizzling marrow. The humans' plates, stone slabs still warm from the forge heat beneath, were now bare save for streaks of dark juss. Lieutenant Ariasato wiped her fingers on a scrap of scent cloth, watching Kurok with measured calm. Across the circle, Private Leo Trent was blinking, as if hoping his pupils could forget what they'd just witnessed. Kurok let the silence grow dense enough to feel like gravity. At last his resonant voice rolled out. "First hunt is truth. Second hunt is balance. You claim kinship with reason, with cities that scrape clouds. Yet you also carry blades." He inclined his massive skull toward the Terran rifles racked beyond reach. "Will you show us the weight your minds carry without metal?" Sergeant Dax Vale shifted, every instinct screaming that this phrasing was a trap. Systems Tech Marek gave a tiny shrug. Nothing in the manuals for dinner invitation evolves into philosophical duel. Sato cleared her throat. Describe the terms of this second hunt. A pair of Velothri attendants dragged a crate the size of a stasis locker into the ring. Its alloys were Terran standard, the core emblem still scorched but visible. Vale recognized the serial numbers, their emergency drone cache, supposed to be sealed on the shuttle. The lid hissed open. Inside lay a stack of hollow projector tiles, sleek as mirrors. Kurok tapped one claw, and the uppermost tile activated, hovering into the air. A three-dimensional terrain model unfolded. Steep basalt cliffs, bioluminescent vines, and somewhere in the valley floor the pulsing icon of a thermal beacon. We plant a beacon, Kurok explained. Your 4 hunters retrieve it. My 4 hunters pursue. No projectiles, no remote weapons, no translators. If you reach the beacon first and leave the valley alive, we acknowledge your balance, mind and muscle. Fail, and you return to your ship as guests, not equals. Trent gulped. And by pursue, you mean? Kurok's mandibles parted in what humans were beginning to catalog as a lethal smile. We will not kill, but we will claim trophies. His gaze slid to Vale's shoulder patch, as though measuring how easily it might be torn free. Sato didn't flinch. Accepted on 2 conditions. 1. The beacon signal shuts down all satellite eyes, theirs and ours. Fair field. 2. If either team decides the game has turned lethal, they broadcast the code Ember and Ice. Contest ends. Kurok considered, muscular tail flicking dust. Agreed. The holomap collapsed. The moment it winked out, for Velothri, including Kurok himself, stripped off decorative armor until only supple muscle and light mesh remained. Each chose a path into the underbrush, without so much as a backward glance. Vale exhaled. Well, that escalated. Gear up, Sato said. No guns, but we've still got blades, thermals, medpacks. Marek, patch my ocular feed to trig the beacon frequency. On it, the tech muttered, hands already dancing over a wrist console. Trent steadied his breathing. Ma'am, just checking, but these cats are telepaths. They'll feel where we're headed. Then we think in braids, Sato answered. Not one linear plan they can sniff out. Layer intentions. Shift often. Make them choose which thread is bait. Vale cracked his knuckles. Finally, something the Academy didn't find a way to make boring. The jungle beyond the ceremonial ring swallowed them whole. 3 suns painted shifting shadows. Hot wind carried spores that glowed faintly in the gloaming. Sato led, eyes flicking between terrain and a faint HUD ghosting her cornea. Vale ghosted her flank, machete whispering through creepers. Marek brought up the rear, scattering sensor dust that mapped pressure changes. Trent, lightest on his feet, ranged wide arcs, planting decoy thermal pucks every 100 meters. Minutes, or maybe heartbeats, passed before the Velothri announced themselves, a thunderous crack of a fallen limb, the snap of a vine cut mid-sway. No roar, no taunt, only the ecosystem reacting to the passage of something built for terminal velocity. Left ridge, Trent hissed over short-range bone mic. Vale felt an alien mind brush the edge of thought, curiosity edged with predatory mirth. He pictured nothing, a blank screen, then a sudden burst of calculus, then the smell of his grandmother's kitchen, unspooled nonsense to blur the scent trail of cognition. Sato halted at a boulder dripping magenta moss. Drop packs. Sprint the ravine dry. 3 of us run hot, 1 goes cold and climbs. Swap rolls every 100 meters. They can't track 4 shifting temps. Trent grinned. I volunteer first climb. They moved. Breath became the only clock. Twice Vale heard claws on stone behind them, but never saw more than a flicker of obsidian hide before it vanished. Once, from the canopy, came a somber chuff, approval, amusement, hard to tell when every tone sounded like predation. At the ravine's throat, Trent, now groundside again, caught a glimmer ahead. The beacon's strobing blue spire lodged amid tangled roots. Between them and it, Kurok stood alone, dew steaming off his shoulders. No trophies yet adorned his belt. Sato stepped forward, hands open. Balance means contest, not slaughter. Kurok's laugh vibrated leaves. Then contend. He crouched, not pouncing, but guarding the beacon like a sentry. Vale whispered, "We can't take him hand to hand." "Not the point," Sato said. She drew her service knife, reversed the grip, and planted it blade down in the loam at Kurok's feet. "A Terran hunts, with mind first, edge second." Kurok blinked, curiosity flaring across the mental link. In that instant of distraction, Trent vaulted the nearest route. Marek yanked the beacon free, and Vale swung a branch, splashing mineral-rich mud across Kurok's face. No harm, just surprise. They bolted, beacon in Marek's arms. A roar thundered after them, but when Vale risked a glance back, Kurok only wiped mud from his eyes and, impossibly, began to laugh. The humans burst into the clearing of basalt slabs, lungs aflame, beacon held high. The rest of the Velothri emerged moments later, predatory calm undisturbed. Kurok strode to Sato, clacked his claws once on the beacon's casing, and bared those terrifying teeth. Not a threat, but something new. Respect. "Balance," he said, the translator unnecessary now. "The knife you left, symbol of mind over metal, will hang in my hall. We dine again as pack." Sato inclined her head. "We look forward to dessert." Somewhere behind them, Vale let out the breath he'd held since the ravine, and Trent finally decided he might live long enough to finish that half-melted protein bar after all. Smoke rose again from the central pit, fatter now, with the oils of richer cuts. This time, the meat wasn't wild-caught or ritual slain. It had been prepared, intentionally, thoughtfully, as though both species now recognized the feast for what it had become. Not a power display, but a pact in progress. Sergeant Dax Vale chewed, with less caution than before. Whatever was on his slab wasn't technically meat, at least not by Terran standards. It had the mouth feel of roasted root, but oozed protein with every bite. "Tastes like barbecue," he muttered. "If barbecue came from a tree that wanted to fight back." "Fungal chimera," systems tech Marek said, licking a spice-stained finger. "High in calorics, neural safe for both species. The Velothri use it for ceremonial endings." Private Leo Trent blinked at him. "You just say words sometimes, man." Across the fire, Kurok had stretched to a recline, his armored tail draped like a question mark. He'd removed even the light mesh he'd worn before the hunt, revealing crosshatch scar tissue over muscle that pulsed like coiled cable. Around him, the rest of the Velothri ate quietly, though one let out a low rumble whenever a Terran reached for a new platter, a warning, or maybe just a reminder that the game wasn't entirely over. Lieutenant Ariasato sat directly across from Kurok. No datapad, no translator, only the subtle strength of someone who understood that true command was quiet, not loud. She held a skewer of roasted gland between her fingers, then handed it to her Velothri counterpart without ceremony. He accepted it with a grunt of satisfaction. "You honor our customs with precision. Few outsiders do." "Precision is how we survive," Sato said, "even among friends." Kurok turned the skewer once, slowly, over the flame before biting down. Cartilage cracked between his fangs like dry wood. "We are not yet friends," he said, "but we are no longer strangers." A murmur of assent rippled through both sides of the circle. For the first time, one of the Velothri leaned toward Marek and tapped the diagnostic band around his wrist, curious. Another used 3 claw tips to trace the edge of Trent's shoulder patch. Small gestures, but real ones. "Protocol will need rewriting after this," Marek muttered. "Diplomacy manuals don't cover meat feasts with muscle-bound telepaths." "Bet you a week of R&R they call this joint cognition dining in the next white paper," Vale said, chewing noisily. Kurok rose. The ring stilled. He moved to the edge of the fire circle, where a slab of stone had been cleared. With one motion, he drew a short blade, not a weapon of war, but a ceremonial thing, etched with marks that shimmered like they were alive. He pointed to it. "One of you, come forward." The tension snapped back like a drawn bowstring. The humans froze. "Did we mess something up?" Trent whispered. "Is this where they pick one of us for actual dessert?" "No," Sato said, standing. "This is ritual. And it's my turn." She stepped across the circle, boots whispering over ash. Kurok handed her the blade, hilt first. In Velothri custom, he said, the one who leads the feast carves the pact. She turned the blade in her hand. It was heavier than it looked. I'm not trained in stone carving, she said, with the faintest trace of a smile. You lead soldiers through hunts and speak peace without fear. That is enough, Kurok replied. Sato knelt, dragging the tip of the blade across the slab. Not words, shapes. The Velothri didn't use language in the traditional sense. Their writing was emotion and metaphor woven into geometry. She carved a circle within a triangle, then a broken line, then a curve that looped back into itself. Kurok crouched beside her. His claw joined hers, adjusting a curve here, deepening a groove there. Together, they etched the final symbol, two mirrored arcs, just barely not touching. The fire crackled behind them. No one else spoke. Finally, Kurok rose again. Now, we are no longer separate. Sato nodded. Now we watch each other's backs. He gestured toward the rest of the Velothri. Your crew sleeps here tonight. Our young will keep first watch. Your weapons remain stowed. So do ours. Trent coughed softly. No offense, but will someone be watching the young? Kurok's grin flickered. They are more disciplined than I was at their age. You will be safe. Marek glanced around. So what now? Post-dinner story circle? Mindmeld karaoke. Vale leaned back on one elbow and yawned. Now, we digest. And pray this fungal stuff doesn't cause hallucinations. Sato's gaze stayed on the flame. She wasn't relaxing yet. Her hand rested on the hilt of the ceremonial blade, not tightly, but it never strayed. Because even here, under the flickering light of mutual trust, with the scent of cooked truth still in the air, apex predators don't stop watching. Not when they finally have a seat at your table. And especially not when you've just proven you deserve one. The stars above the jungle dome blinked into view, one by one, as the artificial canopy shifted to night phase. Bioluminescent spores drifted like fireflies on the cooling breeze, and the crackle of the dying fire pit softened to an ambient hum. Around the stone ring, humans and Velothri settled into uneasy rest. Except for Lieutenant Arya Sato. She remained awake, spine straight, boots firmly planted in the soil, as if any relaxation would signal weakness. Her eyes weren't on the stars. They were on Kurok, who stood alone on a rock outcrop above the circle, his outline sharp against the purpling sky. She rose quietly and climbed to him, stepping where his massive clawed feet had left faint dents in the moss. When she reached the top, Kurok did not turn. You dream with your eyes open, he said. Sato folded her arms. I don't sleep easy in new beds. His jaw tilted toward her. And I don't trust a meal until I've hunted with the cook. They stood in silence for a few breaths. Below them, Sergeant Vale snored lightly beside Trent, who was mumbling something incoherent about sentient mushrooms and emotional meat. Sato sat on the ledge. You brought us here for more than diplomacy. Kurok exhaled, a sound like gravel poured over bone. Yes. Then say it. He finally looked at her. In his eyes she saw something unexpected. Not hostility, not hunger, but hesitation. The kind that only comes from a predator realizing it might need to ask a rival for help. You Terrans are spreading fast, he said. Too fast. But not like spores. Like wildfire. That sounds like a warning. It's a request. That caught her off guard. You're asking us for something? He crouched, long limbs coiled in thought. There is a species deeper in the spiral arm. The Orkai. We encountered them first. Their language is not sound. It is memory, stolen, corrupted. They absorb thought like marrow. They do not negotiate. They do not feast. They feed. Sato's jaw tightened. You fought them. Kurok nodded. We lost. Not in death. In dream. Entire broods fell asleep and never woke. Woke as something else. Their bodies returned. Their minds did not. Sato shivered, despite the heat still rising from the earth. What do you want from us? Humans have chaos, discord, noise. He actually bared his teeth in something like admiration. Your thoughts are tangled, fast, unpredictable. You adapt mid-fall. You might be able to disrupt their feed. You want us to be bait. Bait, he agreed. That bites back. Sato rubbed her temples. And if we say no, then you eat alone again. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at the humans below. How even now, Vale kept one hand near his blade while asleep. How Marek had rigged a low-frequency pulse field around the ring, just in case. They were still ready. Even at rest, they were dangerous. Finally, she turned back to Korok. Send us what you know. My superiors will want data, not parables. He handed her a small obsidian cube. Encrypted. Embedded thought data. Your technopath will know how to read it. Sato took the cube, feeling its strange hum pulse once against her palm. It was warm, too warm for stone. We'll consider it, she said. You already are. They both looked up at the stars then. Not with wonder, but calculation. Somewhere out there, across 1,000 systems, a predator that didn't feast, didn't reason, and didn't stop, was already reaching out for minds it had never met. And somewhere on a different world, a new fire was being lit. One where humans, invited or not, would eventually take seat. Down below, Trent stirred again and sat up, rubbing his eyes. Did anyone else dream of metal trees whispering your name? Vale rolled over. Shut up and go back to sleep, Trent. I'm serious, Trent muttered. I think something peeked at me. Like inside. Through the back door. From the darkness, Marek's voice was quiet and careful. That cube Kurok gave the lieutenant. It's not stone. It's a living data host. I scanned it before she climbed up. It's dreaming right now. What the hell does that mean? Trent whispered. It means, Marek said, we may not be alone in our own dreams anymore. The cube pulsed again in Lieutenant Arya Sato's hand. It was warm, subtly alive, like it breathed, but through thoughts instead of lungs. She sat in the comms tent, flanked by tech specialist Marek and Sergeant Vale, with a portable neuro interface rig cobbled together from what passed for spare parts in a field expedition. The rest of the crew had been quietly dismissed. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant for many eyes. You sure about this? Marek asked. He'd already installed enough neural firewalls to fry a mid-tier AI, and still didn't look convinced. Sato nodded. Start the sync. The cube responded before Marek even activated the tether. Thought data poured from it in waves. Not sound, not images, but emotion-laced architecture. Dreams etched in logic, memories stitched from fear and clarity. Marek's monitor flared. They weren't kidding. This is psionic code. Not just records. Impressions. Direct cortex impressions from Velothri dream anchors. What are we seeing? Sato asked, her voice even. Nightmares, Vale muttered, reading the translated stream behind them. It showed entire Velothri broods, standing motionless under blood-red skies, eyes open but minds blank. It showed Orkai vessels slick and wrong, not flying through space but drifting like they were part of it. Not ships. Not life. Something between. And then a breakthrough. One Velothri survivor screaming a soundless memory across a neurotemporal plane, and humans intercepting it. Terran minds, unlike Velothri, were chaotic enough to resist psionic tethering. The very instability of human thought made it slippery, ungraspable. That's why they want us, Sato said, half to herself. Because we're broken in exactly the right way. More like sharp in the right places, Vale said. We're not prey. Not to them. Marek tapped the screen. Here. This is new. A location. Coordinates embedded in the dream pattern. It's not just memory. It's a warning and a proposal. Proposal. Vale asked. It's a joint station. Half Velothri, half human. A watchtower. Psychic shielding. Research labs. Combat sims. They want us to build it with them. Sato stood. The cube had cooled in her hand. They want a shared bastion, she said. Not just an alliance. A fusion. Well, months later. Outpost Concordia, near Zeta Veloth Prime. The station shimmered in orbit like a predator's eye under sunlight. Sleek, angular. Neither human nor Velothri in design. Built from composite alloys and psionic dampening mesh, it thrummed with quiet purpose. Inside, humans and Velothri moved side by side. Some carried weapons. Others carried tools. A few carried scars from earlier, unspoken wars. But all of them had one thing in common. They no longer saw each other as threats. Lieutenant Ariasato stood in the observation dome, watching as a second human Velothri team returned from a joint patrol. Sergeant Vale walked up beside her, his once skeptical grin now a bit more earned. "Weird, isn't it?" he said. "Fighting nightmares with dreamers." She glanced at him. "We're not just fighting. No. We're changing. The Velothri, too. They used to hunt alone. Now they teach. Listen. Even joke. Sort of." Vale chuckled. "They still eat with their hands. So do we now." Down below, a pair of young Velothri and human recruits exchanged something that looked suspiciously like a fist bump. A shared ritual, born not of mimicry, but respect. From overhead, a pulse passed through the station, not a warning, but a signal. The cube had been integrated into Concordia's neural net. It no longer slept. It watched, as they all did now, together.